I love smoothies, but I don't always know what's in them. Some of them have extra sugar and syrups and not a lot of fruits and vegetables. With Blended 2, I can make my own smoothie in no time and I know exactly what goes in it. I put lots of fruits and vegetables to keep me healthy. Blended 2 is portable, so you can make a smoothie at work, a protein shake at the gym, or even have a margarita at the beach. It is small enough to fit into a cup holder, but powerful enough to break through ice and frozen fruit with ease. Blended 2 is also whisper quiet, so you can make your morning shake without waking up the whole household. It lasts about 15 blends, and then you can recharge it with a USB. Best of all, Blended 2 cleans itself. You just add a drop of soap and some water and you blend it together and you're good to go. It comes in a variety of different colors and different patterns, although I do love my black one. Go to blended.com and grab yours today. Be sure to use the promo MIKE12 to get 12% off and free 2-day shipping.
Hello and welcome to the Love and Compassion podcast with Giselle. We believe love and compassion have the power to heal our lives and our world. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content. On today's podcast, we'll be talking about the power of love in helping us heal our bodies. Today, I'm speaking with the filmmaker as well as the producer of the incredible film Love Heals, an award-winning documentary following the journey of Dana, a chronic pain sufferer in search of healing. Today, I'm here with Krisanna Sexton, who is the filmmaker, who has been passionately producing content since she was 16 years old. As an independent filmmaker, she's able to craft stories in a way that reflect her heart of love and compassion for the person on the other side of the lens. And I'm also here with Dana Crocier, who is not only the producer of Love Heals, but is featured as a main character in the film. Dana's journey is an inspirational one, full of obstacles, including 2 unsuccessful spine surgeries in 2020. While still experiencing some pain, Dana has been able to harness the power of her mind to accomplish things she once thought impossible by practicing the ancient mind-body techniques featured in the film. She now greets every day with a smile as she works hard to spread the message of Love Heals. Welcome to the podcast, Krisanna and Dana. Hello.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, no. I'm so excited that you're here. I was so moved by your film, and hopefully I will not get teary-eyed during our conversation. I actually saw a preview of it in Anita Moorjani's Instagram, and I was instantly drawn, and I saw a little clip of it, and I'm like, okay, I got to watch this film. And I'm so glad that I did. Before I start with my questions, I just want to tell you that I was so moved. There was moments that it just touched my heart so much. And I just want to share one in particular, the scream therapy that you did, Dana, if you remember that. Yes. I was screaming with you and I was crying my eyes out. And I never thought that I actually would have been that moved, but I don't know. It was like something shifted or something happened for me. And so I immediately thought, okay, I want to talk to these ladies. I think this film is phenomenal. And so I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for helping me find Water Up, Fire Down, and also for sharing your story.
Yeah, means a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I haven't heard anybody say that yet. Like they actually did it with me, and I just find that.
Oh, it was very unexpected because when you started to actually do it, I'm like, okay, what's happening here? And then I don't know what happened, but I kind of got sucked into the event, and I remember kind of screaming with you, and I was crying, and then I was like, okay, what's happening here? Then I thought, oh, I should do this scream therapy. For those of my listeners who haven't seen the film, I was wondering if you could start sharing a little bit, Dana, about your story and a little bit about your experiences with chronic pain that actually led to the development of this film.
Yes, thank you for asking. It was back in 2017 when I first started experiencing pain. I was just exercising. I was running on a treadmill and I pulled a muscle in my calf. And it was like, oh, great. I pulled a muscle. I can rest and figure this out. It's no big deal. And after a period of time, my other calf and legs started to hurt, and it just wasn't getting any better. It's like this injury opened up a can of worms in my body. Ultimately, I started seeing, practitioners. I went to physical therapy. Ultimately, they thought, well, maybe the pain is coming from your back. So I started to do some chiropractic care, and all of that was leading me nowhere fast. My pain wasn't getting any better. It was just kind of spreading in the lower extremities of my body and my lower back, sciatica. And, I felt really lost because I had spent an enormous amount of money and time trying to figure out how to heal from this pain and what was actually causing it. So eventually one of the practitioners said, well, you need to go get an MRI on your back because there are a lot of nerves that run through the legs that come from the lower back. So I did. And they said, oh my gosh, you have a herniated disc and there's nerve compression and spinal stenosis and, all of these terms that are very scary when you get them back on an MRI. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay, well, there's the answer. At least I understand what's happening. And, the very last thing I wanted to do was surgery. So they sent me for an injection saying that, this should really help you. And I thought, okay. And it actually made things much, much worse. I think they hit a nerve. I actually had worse pain after the injection in my ankles and feet. I mean, it was getting really, really bad. So one thing led to another. And during COVID, it was March of 2020 when, all of this was coming to a head and they said, we need to get you in surgery before your body starts to shift. And my foot was acting weird and they just made it sound very urgent. And I thought, okay. So meanwhile, Krisanna is, and I won't steal her thunder, but she started getting interested in my journey in a way of maybe I should start filming this, and I'll let her speak more to it. But there was something in her that just thought she should start documenting my journey because it was so crazy. I mean, it went on for years and, I won't ruin the punchline of the film, but I did go through those surgeries, obviously, and they made me worse than before. So began the journey.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That must have been a terrifying time, and so it's so interesting. So thank you for mentioning Krisanna's documentation, because I remember in the film, one of the things that really struck me was that Krisanna had sent that she was ready to witness a miracle. And I was going to ask her, what made you think there would be one? Because the circumstances weren't that, things were not great. Things were scary. And so I was just wondering, Krisanna, if you could share what made you think, oh, I should document this because something good's going to happen.
That is a great question. First, I think I just started filming because I felt compelled. It's like my intuition said I had to, or something. Like I just, and it wasn't like I was filming all the time. I mean, there's plenty of really, really hard, painful moments that I would have never picked up a camera. But I think because even as we got into some of the recovery journey, Dana was like a full-time student of her healing and trying to recover. And we actually started to hear stories of people who miraculously were out of pain or, achieved some sort of incredible healing after trying different modalities and alternative modalities. So then I thought, well, she's doing a lot of different things. So wouldn't it be really cool if we find the one thing? And now for a long time, we were on this journey of finding the silver bullet or the one thing that was going to help her achieve a pain-free life, because in our mind at the time, that was healing. Healing was not having any pain. So of course, as we embarked on that journey, and what you see documented in the film is we started to realize it's changing our relationship to what is healing, changing our relationship to what is pain, or maybe I should say redefining what is healing, changing our relationship to pain. That's actually the most important piece. There is no such thing as, now plenty of people do have in one moment, they go pain-free, but throughout their life, they're going to have other issues. That's the human experience. So yeah, I think that's my long answer to why I don't know that it was a specific moment or anything. It's just, I felt compelled. And then I started to think, at the end of the day, I thought this footage could sit on my hard drive and just be like a marker. Maybe in a year or 2 years, we'll look back on it and we'll actually see progress, because it felt like nothing was changing. So I held on to this hope that things are changing. Maybe it's just so slow that if I have these little markers in time, we can look back and say, oh my God, there was a point where Dana couldn't even sit for more than 15 minutes. She couldn't sit. And I thought, oh, she'll never be able to really work again. And now we can look back and say, oh my God, doesn't have that sciatica pain. She doesn't have that. So even though there's still lingering stuff, it's always changing. It's always evolving. And anyway, so yeah, it's been a really amazing journey and opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you said was so powerful. There were so many layers. The first one that I wanted to talk about was really the concept of you saying, people think that the goal was really to live pain-free. And so we are so sometimes body focused that unless everything is perfect, it just kind of makes us upset, right? Like, because, everything should be perfect. But really, your journey was way deeper than that. There's so many aspects to it. I want to talk about the power of belief, because you had to believe, despite what was being shown out there, what the reality was telling you about what was happening for Dana and what you were witnessing, you had to believe that it could get better. And so in the power of belief is so strong. What role has the power of belief or having that kind of inner guidance played in your lives?
I'll answer first and then I'll let Dana, because of course she was the one experiencing it. But there was some seed that was planted in my mind at some point. I can't pinpoint it. I just think it was divine, where someone said to me, and then I've heard it since, change is the only constant we have. So when Dana was laying, like could barely move, walking a little bit, trying to recover, it felt so long. And I literally would say, it was like my mantra, and I would say to Dana, like, change is the only constant we have. And even if it feels like it's changing for the worse, that's still change. It's still something is shifting. There's no such thing as being stuck. It's just not even. So our brain tells us this is forever. But I just held on to that hope of like, if it can change for the worse, whatever that even means, then it can change for the better. And what if I just redefine what good and bad looks like? Like maybe at some point we're actually going to look on this with gratitude, and I would journal about that. Like something about this, I can't see it now and I'm angry and I basically hate everything, but maybe at some point I'm going to have so much gratitude, because on the other side, it will make sense why we had to experience this dark season where really a lot of our friends or just people in our life couldn't even hang with us. It was too heavy. It was too much, like they were going through COVID stuff, but they were like going on road trips and doing all these things. Meanwhile, we're holed up in our house trying to have Dana recover from surgery. So yeah, we felt like victims, and there was a lot of steps in working that out. But I think that I had to hold on to something, and I even developed a new form of faith. I had walked away from my spirituality that I was raised with, like the Christian faith, and I was rejected in that faith. But I found a new faith that was similar but my own. And that was also an anchor. Like, okay, there's something greater outside of me that's guiding us and leading us. And this is not the end. Maybe it's just the beginning. So if I frame it that way in my brain, what would that mean if it was just the beginning? What kind of story would I write with this chapter? And I wanted to write the chapter of being a really amazing partner and being someone who showed up with love and care and, didn't judge Dana regardless of where she was at in her healing process. And that was just an intention that I set. So, okay, I feel like I rambled a little bit there, but no. I'll let Dana share too.
That was great.
Wow, you were the best partner. I actually can't believe that I got so fortunate to be cared for by such an incredibly kind, loving human like Krisanna, to be honest with you. I don't know how I would have navigated that season without her. So you didn't set the intention, you did it. You gave me the love and support that I needed to get through the most difficult time in my life. So, but the question was about belief. And I will tell you that I really had to dig deep on this one, because the truth of the matter is, when I went into surgery, I had a deep belief that that was going to help me heal, that actually it was going to take care of all the pain that I was experiencing. So I thought, if that was my belief, and I believed it with my whole heart, and it went the complete opposite direction. I went through the first surgery and something felt wrong. I wasn't healing. I was still in, way worse pain than before the surgery, not just because of the surgical site. It was something more. And I didn't know that they, nicked my spinal column, and I had a spinal fluid leak for 6 weeks until they put me back into emergency surgery to repair it. And then the repair didn't go the way they had planned. And I was laying in ICU at some point going, how did I end up here?
Yeah.
How did this happen? Because my belief that I was going to heal through all of that was so strong. And here I am not knowing if I'm going to leave the hospital because they couldn't get the pain under control, the leak, it was a bad situation. And I thought I may never walk again. I may not live. So after a period of time, I was a victim, right? So I felt very victimized. I couldn't believe, I felt like my life was over. I made the biggest mistake of my life by going through this surgery. And then I started to find out how many surgeries, especially spine surgeries, are actually unsuccessful and make people worse. And I thought, what in the world is happening? But what happened during that time was that I got connected to a community. So I was doing research and I found an app actually called Curable, which is for people with chronic pain. And it just came to me as an ad. And I started to listen to some of the content on there. And there was a spine surgeon who does appear in our film. And this man was talking about the damage that is being caused by people with these procedures. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. I'm not, and I'm not alone. And it just so happened at the time he had a community, like he did live Q&A sessions over Zoom twice a week for people like me. And I got plugged into a community. And why that is related to belief is because then I started to hear stories of people who came back from these situations and started to find ways that whatever it was, like Krisanna said, there's no silver bullet, but he taught a lot about calming the nervous system, doing expressive writing to release suppressed anger or other emotions that we have not expressed in our lives. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is all of this? I've had so much trauma in my life. What am I hanging on to? So I started to believe that it was possible for me to overcome all of this when I would hear stories of hope of other people that have experienced severe chronic pain, thought their life was over, and through these practices were able to turn it around through their belief system and knowing that they can heal in this way, knowing that they can start to get their life back in ways that they thought they never could again. So I think the community aspect of it was really huge for me to start hearing other people's stories, which I felt very isolated and alone. Krisanna and I both really did for a long time. So getting plugged into that was huge for me. And then in the film, you'll see that we met with Dr. Bruce Lipton, who actually wrote the book Biology of Belief. And then we started to really understand how our thoughts literally become things and how we can craft our future and start to believe in ways that these things actually can come to fruition. And, obviously that's probably a whole different podcast, but I will say that just visualizing the future that I wanted and believing that I could get back on a mountain to hike or on a bicycle to ride or taking a walk with my beloved Krisanna around the park again, all of those things, as I believed it and would take small steps towards getting the life back that I wanted, it started to unfold that way. So belief is so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, it takes an enormous amount of courage when you don't see it, right? And it is about taking those baby steps to go forward. And so I think this is why the story is so powerful, because, we're always wanting to get to the end. Well, why don't I see it? Why isn't it here? Why isn't it, why isn't it manifested? Why haven't I aligned to it? And that just only reinforces that it's not there. But taking baby steps in order for us, and having the courage to take those baby steps is so profound and powerful. You guys mentioned the connection between our emotions and our body. And I'm a big believer that, illness and disease is just kind of that stuck energy that hasn't had anywhere to go. Can you tell me a little bit about how this experience helped you understand the connection between emotions and the physical body?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I realized through this experience that there is a direct correlation. And I think the first eye-opening experience that I had with that it was actually Krisanna's mom sent me a book. I don't know, it was maybe a couple days out of surgery. And the book was called The Body Keeps the Score. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And I started reading it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me. This is me. And then kind of around the same time as I started seeking information about chronic pain and chronic illness and what is causing it. Why do we get stuck in this loop? Why didn't I just heal after I had that first injury instead of it progressing into what it is? And then I started to realize that there are tools out there, there are books out there, you know, the Mind Body Prescription by Dr. John Sarno. John Sarno is one of the physicians that actually understood this connection to be true. And then, you know, his colleagues are like, you know, you're crazy. What do you mean? But that work ended up becoming really important in my life. And I got connected with, there's a woman that had chronic pain. She didn't go through surgery, but she healed herself, and she launched a platform called the, you know, My TMS Journey. And TMS stands for something that basically explains that the emotions and all of the suppressed anger and different things that we don't release throughout our life start to cause a physiological response in our bodies. It gets trapped. And so I just was eating that information up. I was like, I had not heard of it that way before. And so it made so much sense to me. And then I thought, okay, if that's the case, then I am willing to take the journey within to figure out how to release these emotions and things that I have just piled up throughout my life with trauma. And that's what brought up, you know, the first thing you talked about, right? I went to this incredible, wise practitioner who was going through like the chakra system. I didn't even know what that was back then. What do you mean we have all these energy centers? Well, we're made up of almost all energy as humans. And so I began to peel back the layers, and you know, my throat was something, you know, us holding back and not speaking our truth or not living authentically. It all makes a difference as we go through life. And, you know, Krisanna briefly mentioned it, but our sexuality was something we both had to suppress because of our upbringing for many, many, many years, right? So that played a role. So when you have an experienced practitioner that can take you through something like releasing, I'd never screamed like that in my entire life. And it broke wide open something in me that I had been suppressing. It was like the scream of the little girl who was raped. It was the scream of the person, the little girl inside of me who was just for help, to be seen, to be myself, to not be harmed or abused in whatever way. It was like all of that just built up over time. Emotions being stuck in the body was something it was kind of a new concept to me, but it made so much sense. And nowadays you can just, I mean, find so much information on this out there. I just wish people understood how important it is to take that journey to start to process their traumas, because they can live such a different, more whole, beautiful life, you know, when they're willing to do that work.
Yeah, thank you. Krisanna?
Oh, I feel like Dana shared so powerfully. I will say that the darkness of this journey was kind of like the initiation into looking at everything. And so even though Dana was the one experiencing so much pain, like feeling so helpless in that season, brought up a lot of stuff for me. And so we both on our own just were like, okay, I called it the dredging. All right, let's look at everything. And we were in therapy and we were seeing an intuitive, and just like, let's do all the work we can do, all the journaling, and it was like our own separate journeys, but parallel, because I thought we're being given space and time and an opportunity. And let's just do this inner dark work that we finally have the space for. So yeah, it was really, really painful. And I felt like a lot of times it got worse before it got better. Like I couldn't meditate for more than 10 minutes without hearing a screaming girl inside my head, like screaming. So we were doing Joe Dispenza's training at the time, like virtually, and we're actually going to his in person in March in Australia. Yeah. So we're doing 7 days intensive. So excited for that. But this was all virtual. And at the time I could barely get through it, or I would get through it barely. And then I would scream like into a pillow, literally, because I had this little girl that was starting to surface. So I had to actually do that work in order just to calm my mind enough to be able to meditate. And that felt like baseline. You know, people would sit for 20 minutes and I couldn't do it because I had so much unrest. So yeah, I think the emotion piece is really powerful. I think it's something that we're ever learning and trying to better understand. I will say something I observed that I just like to provide as maybe an disclaimer is I saw that Dana also put a lot of pressure on herself to like fix it. Like something's broken because I have all this pain. So there must be something emotionally broken in me. So I need to go and fix. And it was like a job almost. And we've been doing some work with Anita Morjani, and she talked about this thing of like, even in her journey, well, and that's how, Anita, obviously, even in her journey, she said she does believe that there are these components that lead to illness and disease, but she was basically saying it's unconscious. Yes, it was my fault, but it was unconscious. So I just feel like I need to say that because I think we can just almost like be frustrated with ourselves. How dare we hold on to this? Well, it's safety. It's like all we know to do when our parents are, it's toxic at home, and then we shove things down so that we don't express to keep ourselves safe. What a gift that we have that part of us. And then as adults, we can start to release it. And I think it's just like having grace and love and compassion through every step of that journey, that there's nothing broken with us. There's nothing wrong. We were always doing the best we could. And now that we are conscious and we can say, oh, this is a piece I can work on. Beautiful. What a gift. But yeah, thanks for letting me share.
So I wanted to ask a question around what you just said, because I think what you said is so pivotal. And I've observed this too in my own life and in the people that I've been with, which is, we have this understanding that we create our own reality. We have this, or at least some of us have this understanding that our thoughts are created. And then we get really mad at ourselves because most of the time we're created subconsciously. So we wouldn't want to hurt ourselves on purpose. We would never do that, but we do it because of all of these beliefs and thoughts and just kind of emotions that we have pent up. And so this is why I think love and compassion are so important. Having love and compassion for ourselves throughout this aspect of the journey, as we get to kind of unpack, as we get to kind of have the courage to face that fear. What role did self-love and self-compassion have in your journey towards healing?
Literally everything. It was everything.
Good answer.
Yeah. I mean, but
Done.
to really, it's true. And I will get a little bit more succinct in this, because at the very beginning of this journey, when I would start to hear how much love and compassion for yourself was the key component to, I don't want to even say healing, but the acceptance of where I was at, I couldn't even fathom in that moment. But as I started to do the work, I would do things like write a letter to my body, or I was like learning these skill sets of things I'd never done before in expressive writing. And then what started to happen was I would read it back, because I would write it in third person, and I would go, that poor human. Oh my gosh, they have been through so much. And thinking of it as I would a friend or a loved one or family member. And I was like, wait a minute. So if I can feel that way when reading back something that's not, about me, but it is, why is it that I'm not able to find that compassion, love for myself? I'm treating myself like a machine. Okay, I've checked all the boxes today. Why don't I feel any better? Or, I've done all this work. I've done, my meditation and this and that and the other, and nothing was changing. But I realized very quickly that the more that I was not loving and accepting and compassionate to myself for where I was in that moment, all that does when you hope and wish to be somewhere other than you are, is it just ramps up your nervous system and teaches your body and mind that you're not okay. And it just has this perpetual cycle of pain, emotional pain too, especially because you get so defeated. So something at some point clicked in me going, wait a minute. My body deserves to be loved and accepted for where it is right now. Everything that I've been through, who I am today, is a result of what I've gone through. And so it took me on I will say, a forgiveness journey as well, not just of everybody who hurt me, but of myself. I put a lot of pressure on myself to be perfect. And what I found through this journey as well is that a lot of perfectionists struggle with chronic pain and chronic illness. It's like one of the types, the human types that tend to get into these cycles because we're just so darn hard on ourselves. So the role that self-compassion and self-love played was absolutely instrumental. It was pivotal. It was the paradigm shift that I needed in my journey to start to change my mindset about who I am, about why I deserve love, and about what was possible for my future with that. And then people will see, if they watch the film, we visited again when we were with Bruce Lipton. He was doing what's called muscle testing on me. And I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
About, do I really love myself, and how can we start to cultivate more love for ourselves? Because I think it's one thing to say it. Oh, sure, I love myself. Of course I do. But do we? Like, really at our core, do we? So I think I needed that awareness. The fact of the matter is, a lot of this was just my lack of awareness. So if there's anything that my journey can do for people or our film, is create a level of awareness and self-reflection that people may not have had before, that can start to put them one step closer in that direction of more love for themselves, more recognition that they can take an active role in their healing journey, and more hope that a shift and a change is possible for their lives.
Mm-hmm. Krisanna, did you want to say something?
I mean, I just love everything Dana's sharing, but I find the word love very interesting. And I thought a lot about, even as I created the film, I had like Post-it notes all on my wall and like all the different, and I thought about even trying to dig into like, what is our definition of love? But it's so big. It's like too much to try to embark on in, 80-minute film. But that being said, I really love, we were just at this event with Anita, and she talked about, she doesn't even like using the term unconditional love, because if it's not unconditional, what is it? It's not love. And I think that we think we love ourselves. I thought I loved myself, but it had a lot of conditions. Only if I perform this way, only if I act this way, then you're good. It's like, I was a mean, abusive parent to myself almost. And it was only in the film really that I started to unpack, what does it mean to truly love yourself? It's like, as I was editing, I realized, oh, I actually don't even know that I have this for myself. And that, I think, is a journey, but I don't know that we can even experience it from others, because I think we have moments of unconditional love for each other. But I found, even for myself, and just kind of being in this world for a while, I'm theorizing this maybe, but I feel like the truest, most pure unconditional love is in our inner self, in our inner world, in our true self. And meditation is such a pathway towards that. Like, once I could finally meditate, then I could experience this state they actually call in Korea, it's called muah. And it's where it's nothingness. It's where and they say that's the state where you can experience unconditional love. And so I think everyone has like different terms for that. But when I got there, I was like, oh, this is so peaceful. There's no judgment. There's no shame. There's no fear. It's just pure. It's like pure essence, like where we came from. So I think my journey now is like, how do I regularly reconnect to that? And then as I give that to myself, it's only then that I give to others. Because I thought I was unconditionally loving, even towards Dana. I was like, oh yeah, I think. But then in the back of my mind, there would be these other like, strings attached, or this person didn't do enough for me, or I give so much, and then it's not love. It's not pure. So I'm still unpacking that, and it's still work in progress. But I think I'm just recognizing it just starts within. I can't give to anyone else what I'm not giving to myself. And that is the most healing form of love. And then, of course, what it does to our nervous system is creates the perfect conditions for healing. We can do all these other things, but in that state of pure love and pure essence, healing just happens. It's just, and I think it's not just physical, right? It's like layers of trauma and emotional stuff healed too. So yeah, I love love.
Yeah. I completely agree with what you both had said. You can't really love someone until you fully love yourself, because then you don't need them to be different. You don't need them to give you anything. It really comes from within. And I know in my own journey, it's been challenging, right? I remember that I had a hard time even doing, I'm sure you guys have heard of Louise Hay. She used to have this mirror exercise where you tell yourself how much you love yourself. And it was so hard to get through. And I didn't realize how hard it was to get through. But, like when you commit, and over time, the more that you show up for yourself and the more you face those challenging emotions, the easier it does get easier. Sometimes it does, like I find Krisanna is the same thing, or sometimes it gets a little bit worse and you're like, oh man, is it time to eject? And you're like, okay, no, I'm just going to even if I just show up for myself for 5 minutes. And over time, it does get easier and easier in being able to tap into that well of love that we naturally have, and I feel we're born with. But then we learn all of these things that kind of get us away from ourselves. And so for me, the path of going back to myself is also about unlearning all of that stuff that we've learned. I wanted to go back to the process that you guys share in the film. I think it's a Water Up Fire Down. And I gotta say, like, when I heard about it, I thought it was so interesting. I've only started doing it a couple of weeks ago, I think. And then I found that my breathing is like from my belly, which I was always a shallow breather. I was always like, right. And I'm like, and I would try different exercises to try to get to move down, and it just didn't. And so naturally, and then I also sit straighter now. So that's good. I was wondering how you found Water Up Fire Down, and sort of what and how it helped you kind of in your journey.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, because this is a bigger answer. I think both of our perspectives are very different in how we found all this and how it helped us. So go ahead, Krisanna.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Water Up Fire Down is kind of the terminology that Ilchi Lee put around this energy balance, which is based in ancient Korean practices. But of course, you see very similar practices throughout the world. Interestingly, something I wasn't able to fit into the film, but one of the women who was in our retreat that we filmed was taught the same principle in Hopi tradition.
Oh, wow.
But it was not called Water Up Fire Down, but it was all about babies need to have their bellies warm and their heads cool. And they taught, like, this is the way of natural balance. Your belly needs to be warm and your head is cool. And so she's like, I never really understood it until I came to. So I say all that because, this is terminology that's around something that's so much bigger than, energy balance. It's talked about in many different traditions and many different practices, but that's the term that Ilchi Lee used. And so he was the one who really wanted to create a film in light of COVID and what everyone was going through with the pandemic. He wanted people to understand that you have the power to heal yourself, and that self-love is the way, that there's a power in self-love. And so that's really what we were presented at the beginning. Was he was sharing about this idea for a film and wanted us to work on it. And I was like, well, something that doesn't put the onus on an individual, but puts it on yourself. Like, it doesn't give your power away to a guru, but it says you have the power inside of you. I was very interested in that. And then even as we did the filming initially, at the very beginning, it wasn't even supposed to be about Dana or our journey at all. We were just going to tell this people's stories and really try to unpack like what that looks like. And then it turned into Dana's journey. And it was like I had this downloaded meditation, and then Ilchi Lee had that the same day. And we agreed, wow, oh my God, we're supposed to be following Dana's journey and just see how it helps her. So we had been exposed to some of these things before, but we hadn't like really dug into it. We had gone to the retreat center in Sedona, but this was our time to say, what does it look like when you really dig in and like do this daily? And then what does it look like for people trying it for the first time? How quickly can they heal or transform or whatever? So yeah, I mean, it's a really powerful concept, but I wanted to share the Hopi bit because that was something that was really enlightening to know. It's not just amazing. One person's deal. But yeah, I'm curious Dana's perspective too.
Well, I think for me, I lived my entire life with a hot head. Like I literally was feverish throughout my entire life, and I never understood why. And my energy balance was so far upside down because it was just so imbalanced. Yeah. So for me to start to learn these concepts when we started the film, I was like, oh, I've done yoga before, I've tried meditation, all these things, but I did not know the power of bringing that energy and that fire down into your core. That concept really never occurred to me until we started doing the film and learning the concept of Water Up, Fire Down. And then it all made sense. So all of the practices that we were taught, we'd gone to retreat, but when we filmed for the documentary, it was so helpful to learn, like in my brain and in my body simultaneously, what this means and how it shows up in our lives in everyday life and what we can do to get that balance back. So it was pivotal for me to understand that that is a environment. It's an environment that your body can be in harmony and can create that healing effect in our bodies, because the mind is, I mean, it's amazing to learn when you learn about the mind body connection and how it's just truly one entity, and how the pathway to all of this was through the body. I was like, okay, this is a big concept for me. So what I found was that there were certain modalities that resonated with me more than others. So when I would tap on my, not just the EFT tapping that you hear, that you see, that is also very, very helpful, but I needed to get out of my brain and into my body. I needed to stop thinking about all of these things and start just being in my body, where that started to become my safe space. That should be the safe space. So just tapping, and then we learned a lot of Qigong and Tai Chi techniques. And for me, meditation is really great. I can do that, but there was something about connecting movement with breathing was very meditative for me. It was like a moving meditation. So part of my healing, I think, really comes in the form of like Qigong movements and stuff like that. Now, of course, we're going to immerse ourselves in meditation for a week in the very near future with an expert. But I think there are many, many ways to get that energy balance. Once you have an understanding and can be given tools, the point is not that we don't have the information accessible, it's more like, are we going to use it? Are we going to practice it regularly? And I will be the first to admit, there are times I get so busy that I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't get into my body at all today. And guess what? My body will tell me, or Krisanna will also tell me. So yeah, energy
Your
balance.
body tells Krisanna and Krisanna tells you.
I think, yeah, they're in cahoots with each other to help me. So yeah.
And also, I'll just add about, the gut brain is really powerful, and there's so much science around that. And we hold our stress and a lot of our trauma in our stomach, so it gets cold. And so when we put attention towards it, it is interesting. I've experienced my own kind of releasing, and then we hear people telling us like they start doing work on their abdomen area, and like the body will start shaking. It's like releasing years of trauma. And that can be kind of scary, because we're taught also that like that kind of shaking is not good. And of course, it's amazing how science is like proving all of these things that have been around for thousands of years, that this is very healthy for us. So I think it's amazing that just having the attention on the stomach and the gut brain. And then of course, there's now a lot of science around the heart and heart coherence. And so it's all connected. Our whole body is just trying to send us all these messages. But yeah, for myself, it was incredibly transformative to do the work in my core, which I know released a lot of stuck trauma that I didn't even have memories of. And I just could feel myself getting more and more access to energy. Like my body didn't have to protect me from whatever that was. I didn't even have to know what it was, but it's like, oh, I'm having more energy and I have more joy. And it's just amazing how it all goes together.
It is, yeah. And then you have more energy to focus on what you want to create, right? It's such an incredible thing to witness unless you're doing it. I have had experiences with Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I was having those weird body shakings and energetic releases, but I wasn't connecting the two. I was just like, oh, Googling the YouTube, and people will be like, oh, that's very normal. I'm like, okay, that's that's fine. I did want to comment on something you both had said that I think it's important for us to stress, which is the allowance. And so often in our lives, we're under so much resistance. We don't want to be where we are. We hate what's happening to us, but it's that resistance that prevents it from really going. So being in harmony, it's part of that is being an allowance. What role has allowance really helped you in getting to where you are?
I think allowance is almost as important as self-love and compassion, because I had to let go. Allowance to me means letting go and just allowing whatever the outcome to be, without forcing, without pressure, just so much angst over what the outcome was going to be. And I'll be honest with you, when it was realized that I was going to be part of the film and the protagonist and my journey was going to be followed, can you imagine the amount of pressure I put on myself? Oh my gosh, I have to heal during this filming. Like, what am I going to do if I don't get any better? And at some point, something clicked in me, and it was like, oh my gosh, the amount of pressure that we put on ourselves as humans to make sure everything goes exactly as we want it to is just, it's so, I think, detrimental to the human spirit in a way, because it just makes things really heavy. And that's how I felt for the longest time, until I allowed myself to be where I was and not try to push and force. So allowance is really important. And I think it, in the letting go and accept, so actually it's really as important, and it is combined with self-compassion and whatever, you know, loving yourself looks like. It's certainly not putting pressure on yourself to be something different than you are in that moment. The more I could accept myself, even accepting the anger, even accepting feeling defeated, feeling like a victim. I actually had to process those feelings first, because usually that's what I would suppress. Like, I wore as a badge of honor, like I am so strong and I get through everything and I forgive everybody and I'm never angry. I thought that was such a good quality, you know, but it wasn't healthy for me. It's very normal and important for us to express when we're sad or angry or frustrated, and then let it pass. Or when we're afraid. I had so much fear. You know, there's a reason why animals in the wild, they get chased, and then after they shake, literally physically shake it off and go back to their life. They're grazing, whatever. I know we hear that term a lot, but it wasn't until I started to understand that I needed to process those things and allow the anger, allow the pain, allow it all to pass. And then I could move into, you know, a more authentic state of being, which was everything. So yeah, allowance is huge.
I love these questions so much, by the way.
Oh,
really beautiful.
I love this conversation.
Oh, same. Yeah, it's just refreshing. I think I just I interchange the word allowance with acceptance. So to me, there's actually a moment in the film where this beautiful master O talks about healing is the pathway of accepting, or I don't know, I'm like blanking how she says it, but essentially it's accepting everything. And I really had to sit with that sentence has stayed with me for a long time. And I find if we align with the message, I've heard this a few times in the last few weeks from a few different people I really respect. I think some of it was in our Joe Dispenza training. So I'm like, oh, this is something coming to mind for me right now that I need to absorb, which is everything is either motivated by love or fear. And so if we look at those two, well, acceptance is love. And then fear is the opposite. Anything that comes out of fear. So when I'm afraid, I control, I judge, I think things should be different. I don't understand why it's not happening sooner. Like all of that is in this fear emotion that I think it's important for me to just love and accept. So it's interesting, the dance of love and fear, but I think acceptance just says it's okay that you're afraid. And we don't have to change anything. And I've been even asking myself this as it relates to my like people in my life or even close family. What would it look like if I just accepted them exactly as they were? And I didn't ever expect them to change. And I didn't ever expect them to do anything different than what they're doing. What if that's like their divine right to exist as they are? It feels so hard, but that's so loving. And isn't that what I would want for myself from them? And isn't that how I would want to even treat myself? Okay, so that's my work, is to accept myself and accept. And even this was a journey as Dana was on her journey. I realized I needed to learn to be accepting of her choices for her own healing. That's her divine right. She got to decide if she wanted to take pain meds or not. It was not up to me to tell her you need to take pain meds because you know. So man, I just think that's like the secret of everything. If we could just sit in acceptance of all that comes up and then observe it and be like, well, it's really interesting how mad I'm getting about this right now. Okay, I'm just going to accept myself and love myself through it. Oh, we'd have access to, it's like goes back to the other question, we'd have access to so much more energy because our brain is so like, I have to control and I need to be safe, and it all comes from fear. So even the work I feel like I'm doing right now is how do I send that inner child who's so programmed to fear, how do I just send her so much love that she's like lets down that angst, or their angst reduces, I guess, even if it's never gone. It's like, oh, you don't have to be in the driver's seat. The fear is a guide. I want to move towards the things I'm afraid of, because the other side of that is really great, but that's only through love and acceptance.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that in my own journey of learning to love myself, I had to ask myself the very difficult question of, even if I accomplish nothing in life, even if I don't do anything or help anyone or do anything, can I still love and accept myself? Can I still see myself as worthy of my own love and attention? And that was hard. It was hard for me to look at, because I always had the need to accomplish. I also had that perfectionism in terms of like, oh, I got to contribute and it has to be a huge contribution and it's like, no, if I can look at myself and say, I don't need me to change. I don't need to be a specific way. Things don't need to be in a particular way. I can still see myself as worthy just because I exist, just because of that. Like that's powerful. And what you said is so powerful. If I can allow myself, I don't need people to be different. I can just allow their divinity to be, in, as long as by first starting to see the divinity in myself. And it's like, it's like, wow, I want to get there.
I'm gonna have to sit with that. I want to do some journaling around that, because I think I'm still like, no, but I'm here to do a lot of things. So
yeah, exactly. And so we're caught in this accomplishing, in this doingness, instead of the beingness, instead of just being, I am magnificent. You are both magnificent, just as you are. And I think sitting with that, and how the more love you inject in there, the more stuff comes up you don't even have to go looking for it. Like, you don't have to dig for gold in there. You just, as soon as you inject a little bit of love in there, that stuff comes out and goes, no, here are all the reasons why I don't think that would work. Right. And so it can feel very, very challenging, but worth it. And the other thing that I also want to stress that you pointed out, which I think is so phenomenal, is, and I know in my journey, I was the perpetual student. I was always looking for experts. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix it. And then I had to realize, oh no, like all these people are my guides. But if I don't do the work, if I'm not there to be my own hero, it just goes nowhere. And so my relationship with my teachers has sort of changed. My relationship with other people has sort of changed, because really no one's coming to save me. Right? How has your relationship with experts changed?
Oh man, that's a great question. I feel like I don't put so much weight on the opinion and idea of others anymore, because those are things that they believe and may have worked for them. And I found myself in the beginning of my healing journey, when I started to unravel all of this, looking for like, well, who had my condition? Who had spine surgery? And then what did they do? And I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the same thing. And it was like, that's not how it works. But I just felt so desperate for healing. And, people experience that physically, emotionally, like, well, what are you doing? What works for you? And I think for me, just recognizing that I wasn't looking inward for decades of my life. So it's really hard to expect somebody to recognize that they are their own best healers. That sounds outlandish to them. Mm-hmm. My dad is a great example. He's had chronic pain as long as I can remember, back pain, leg pain. It was like so similar. And his hip, and he's getting injections, and he's just always putting the power in the hands of these surgeons and doctors. And at some point, we got the film done, and I was like waiting for him to watch the film. And I thought this was going to like completely change his life, and he would take a different route and start to take the journey inward and do the work. And, maybe it planted a seed, but he's still doing this outward approach. Like, who can help me? Who can fix me? And I honor his journey. My dad is in his late 60s, and it hasn't been easy for him. And it's asking a lot of us as humans to crack ourselves wide open. And I recognize the amount of courage that takes. But once you do that and can start to listen to those inner callings and things that our intuition is deep down telling us, waking up every day and realizing I need to ask myself, what do I need today to feel most whole and have the most amount of wellness, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, that I can have today? What does that mean? Does that mean I give myself a break and I sleep extra? Does that mean I do something for somebody else because that's going to make me feel most alive today? Does that mean I do my, meditation and my qigong? Maybe I go to the gym. Maybe I take a walk. Whatever that is, I think it changes for each of us.
Mhm.
And recognizing that those answers lie within and not in somebody else is life changing. I'm so grateful to have that now.
Yes, amen. I think experts are very important. And I think also realizing that we're all one is very important, because if we're all one, then we have access to the same information and knowledge and counsel. And similarly, especially, man, I just feel like Dana and I's whole relationship has, like, the same month we got serious in our relationship is the same month that her pain journey started. So this is, and I, there's no negative feelings about that, but it's just interesting that that's also been our journey. So in the beginning, for several years, and especially the more desperate we got, we did a lot of what I call giving our power away.
Mhm.
And I now look back at some of those decisions and I think, there are no accidents, but I have regrets because it caused a lot of pain, even in giving our power away. Because I think there's people that are really incredible and do a lot of good in their expertise. And then I think there's people who can, like the ego likes to do, who can take advantage, and it can be for their own gain. And even our entire medical system, there's a lot of beautiful things about it, but then there's also parts of our medical system that take advantage of people, that look at the amount of procedures versus the outcomes. So in giving our power away, I just found that we weren't any better off. We just basically had less money and more pain and more suffering. So now really what I feel like we gained in this journey, and something that I like to share about, is just sovereignty, maintaining your sovereignty. And it doesn't matter how much you feel like you're suffering. It's not ever worth it to put your healing in the hands of someone else. But like you said, to see them as guides. And I also think that our intuitive once told us there's as many healing paths as there are people, because everyone's healing path is so unique, right?
Wow.
So we all need a different access point. So even when people from all over the world email Dana and are looking for answers, and she just encourages them, like, yeah, here's a set of resources, but you have to go inside and maybe start somewhere, but very quickly you're going to feel like, this isn't for me. There's something about it. Or, oh, maybe there's something here that I should pursue because I'm curious about it and I feel compelled to learn more. And then that leads me to someone else. And then that leads me to someone else. And so, yeah, I just think we're over the idea of gurus. I think there are plenty of people that still need to give their power away for a period of time. And I honor that journey. Even in religion, we see that. Sometimes we need to look to someone else. But my hope, and what I know is true for my own journey, is that eventually I realized, that was just a mirror pointing back to me, what's possible. So when I see someone like Joe Dispenza, or someone like this incredible level of influence, that's what's possible. That's the limitless potential inside of me that I also have access to. And what if I just looked at that within myself, instead of saying I need him or I need them? I look at that within myself. There's some well there that maybe I won't be on stages, but for me, maybe it looks like creating films. Maybe for someone else, it looks like raising their kids in a beautiful way that they become humans who help other people. There's all of these ways in which we can access that limitless potential. But, I really honor those who have that influence and keep pointing us back home, because that's ultimately where all of it resides. And like I said, if we're all one, if we're all the same consciousness, then it's all within us anyway.
Yeah. Wow, what you both said is so powerful. Yeah. I'm kind of beyond words in this way. I know, that's what I'm like. I'm like, I got nothing left. I got nothing left to ask. It's just mic drop in here.
Well, thank you for such thoughtful questions. I mean, it sounds like you've been on quite a journey yourself.
Fantastic. I have definitely been on quite a journey. No, Dana, you mentioned leaving your work. I left my work. That was very similar to the medical system. I used to work in the child welfare system, very fear-based, very constricting, very focused on separation, isolation, not on purpose. It's just how we designed it, because that's where consciously we were, right? I find these systems are just a mirror of where we are as human beings, what our level of conscious awareness is. And so when I look at my life, how I dealt with hurt was separation, isolation, get away from me, I don't want to, or punishment. And so what do we see in our world? Jails, medical systems that are all about cutting stuff off, taking stuff out, separating, isolating. And how did we used to deal with people with mental health issues? We used to separate and isolate anything that is aberrant. One of the degrees I did was in statistics, right? And they have this bell curve thing where it's like, but do you know that the majority of medications and all that stuff is done for the 80%ers, right? Like for the majority of people and there's outliers, people that don't fit into this curve. And we're all so desperately trying to fit into that curve because we have this need to belong. But miracles are outside the curve. Magic is outside of that curve. It's outside of that norm, or we've deemed norm. And so that's what I am really playing with now, right? Like, like this film, like not the norm, right? And so, and this is why all of these point to magic and miracle, which I think it's our birthright. It's our birthright to live these experiences and live with joy and abundance and all of these things that we want to experience. Because like you said, we're consciousness, and consciousness wants to expand, whereas fear makes us contract. And so it's been an interesting journey of really getting to know myself and facing my own fears. And your film resonated so deeply with me in a way that I didn't expect. I thought, oh, that's cool. I've done Dr. Joe's work for a long time as well. And I love Dr. Joe's work and can't wait to see him when he comes to Toronto. But there was something about your film that was so deep, and so it just resonated with me in a way that a film hadn't in a long time. And so I went all in, and I'm like, okay, let me see it. And then when I did, I was, like I said, I was crying with Dana. I was like, and I thought, wow, just, like to be able to express that connection with someone that I don't know, that I'm seeing in a film. To me, it was, wow, that's powerful, that as she's healing and she's screaming, I'm doing it with her. I'm connecting in that way. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. That makes such an impact on me, because in those moments, I felt so vulnerable and so just, oh gosh, I can't even explain how a lot of the things we show in the film and things that we didn't, just felt so vulnerable, and I felt alone for a long time. And then after the film was released and we started hearing from people just like you that expressed how even in watching the film, they felt parts of them start to heal or open up in ways that hadn't before. And I think, yes, Krisanna and I have been put, I think, together as a couple and also placed on this planet to help spread awareness, raise consciousness, and spread a lot of hope and healing through our films. And it just blows my mind. We did it. Like, it's actually happening. The film's been out a year and we still get messages from people that blow my mind. And I'm just so honored that it impacted you in such a way that took you another step on your journey and maybe opened up something different for you. And that you allowed us the opportunity to have this beautiful conversation to share with others. I'm just really honored. Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to give you an opportunity to share with my audience, like, where can they find you? Where can they find the film? What else are you working on? What do you want to promote? Please share.
Okay, I will share about Love Heals, and then I'm going to pass it to Krisanna because we are creating something new as well. So if anybody listens to this and they want to see the film, I'm actually going to do something a little bit special for your audience, because the film is not available all the time. We do limited releases and we're creating strategic partnerships. And the great news is, we've won some awards and film festivals, and our film is being accepted to be nationally broadcasted on PBS, maybe in the fall of this year for a couple of years, but there's still no guarantee that you'll see it. So if your audience would like to see Love Heals, I'm going to give them a private rental link. And so they can go to loveheals.com. I'm sorry, take that back. The website is lovehealsfilm.com/rent. That is not accessible publicly, but if people are feeling like, gosh, I really want to see this film now because they think it would help them in some way, I also don't want to hold that back from people. So there is a rental fee, but right now it's just not available for purchase or available all the time. So I suspect that will change in the future. This is the year we're still really pushing out partnerships and creating a lot of momentum. And then I suspect later on it will be more available. Oh, and also we have a really cool social media platform. Like, I think Love Heals Film on Instagram and Facebook. We have a community there. It's really interactive. We share some really cool behind the scenes stuff. So we'd love to have you follow us on social media as well.
For sure.
Krisanna?
Yeah, and well, it's really amazing because in creating Love Heals and the response that we've gotten, which by the way is not all glamorous, like releasing a film is a lot of hard work. And Dana is kind of the main force behind that now, because I also have my own business and I have other client work. So anyway, this call, I will say, is very refreshing to like remember back, because sometimes the days are just long and hard, it feels like. And that's okay, because this is the chapter that we're writing and trying to help a lot of people. And all that to say, this really sparked in us something like a new calling, I guess, where we just decided, man, together we are a force and we can create content that really helps spread hope and healing throughout the planet. So Dana she was compelled after she saw this article from HeartMath about heart coherence and the studies and the research that have been done between horses and humans. And she also had an experience where she saw an autistic child speak for the first time. It was at 7 years old, in working with a horse. And that just sparked in us something like, what is going on here? There's some magic to this horse-human connection, but it's not just about the horse. The horse is its own powerful, energetic being, and there's science around that. But then the research of heart coherence, which is where, Joe Dispenza teaches and others teach in that way, like how to achieve that yourself. And we're making a film about that. And we're just going on a journey of discovery. And I think it's about connecting to ourselves, which also helps us connect to nature and Mother Earth around us. And horses are really like a beautiful access point to that. And they also have their own sovereignty. And even the caretaking of these animals is a reflection of how we care for ourselves. So yeah, I mean, we're just exploring that. So that film we're super, super excited about. And it's called Rescued Hearts Film. And we just put the website up, rescuedheartsfilm.com. And that's a great way. You can also connect with Dana and I. Our business is Live Wild Films. So I know we're giving you like a lot of different options and such, great. But yeah, we're just on this journey of like, I think this is going to be one of many. As we're in production of this film, we have other people reaching out to us saying, wait, I'd actually like for you to do a documentary on this, and then I'd like to hire you for this. And so we're being very selective, but we feel how we want to spend our time and energy is in creating content that just encourages people to do the journey of going with, and the remembering of the power and this well of like wisdom that exists inside of us. And sometimes we just need to be encouraged in that way. So yeah, check us out, Rescued Hearts Film. We plan to have the film done by the end of the year, and which is a very exciting, and in the world of documentary, it normally takes 2 to 3 years. So it's a very tight deadline, but we did Love Heals in 9 months. So we feel like it's possible. Wow. We feel like the world needs this message now. And we like to put deadlines on it so that it doesn't drag out. Like we have to, so we're doing a lot of production. Anyway, thanks for asking, but we're really excited.
This is so great, because I think you point to something really pivotal in your film, which is we become so disconnected with ourselves that we're so disconnected with nature, right? And I think this is why we're seeing things as they are. The weather is weird. How do we reconnect back in a way that is harmonious and in balance, right? Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I so appreciate this. I would love for you to come back when your next film is out. We can promote it, we can talk about it. I'm definitely in and seeing it. So yes, thank you so much. See you soon.